Good afternoon. Today is the 21st day of January 2016, and we are continuing with our explorations in Savitri. We are in Book 2, the Book of the Traveler of the Worlds, Canto 4, the Kingdoms of the Little Life. It's a long canto and will take some time to explore it. We are, as always, grateful to have Alok with us. And today, a very brief passage from Purani. He writes, even though readers of poetry in England have not as yet come to realize the value of Sri Aurobindo's contribution, I believe that time will come when that will happen. Savitri is a great epic which ushers in a new age in poetic creation. Being a masterpiece of the greatest mystic of our times, it does not lend itself easily to mere intellectual understanding. Its meaning, rather its reality, is to be felt. One has to allow the vibration of it to sink into oneself. One has to arouse in himself the power of vision and see what the Master is showing. Page 136.
I think the time will come for Savitri when man does not read it with the understanding of a language or the lens of a language, but with the eyes of the soul. Then Savitri is felt, experienced, lived as something extremely delightful. Language is another matter. Yes. Human language is a creation of the mind as of now, and hence, unfortunately, serves to divide. It is supposed to be a bridge. And the rules of language, again created by the mind, create further difficulty because we get lost into the technicalities and the rules. And the mother even spoke about a new language which is going to emerge with the new age. And she spoke about it with reference to a child who had written a letter to her. And she said, look, there are indications that a new language will emerge. She was so far and forward looking.
There's also a beautiful passage of Sri Aurobindo about when one begins to see with the heart.
Yes.
And I'll try to bring that next time.
Yes.
It's very beautiful.
I think
when one has the vision in the heart, he begins.
Yes. So that also, answers, I think, one of the questions which just now you had raised, that Sri Aurobindo has written so much about so many things. How do we become conscious of the mind, the vital, the physical? So many things we have to become conscious. So we cannot become conscious of these things with the light of the mind. It's like throwing a small little flame and trying to light up a whole journey through the sea. We have read that there are sharks, there are whales, there are all kinds of things. But all that we have is a small little flickering flame with so much wind and water splashing around it. So the first thing is to get at the true light, and that is the light of the soul. It is only when we have the authentic soul vision that all these things can spontaneously be seen. So the first step in yoga is essentially to develop this soul vision by whatever means. And I think that applies to Savitri also. At the same time, I must say Savitri is an excellent means to develop the soul vision. And it works in many ways. One, because constantly when we read Savitri, we exchange our surface orientation with a deeper vision of life.
Yes.
Second, Savitri itself has inbuilt within it the consciousness that can take us deeper and deeper, the power and the consciousness. It's a truth vision. So by its very logic or its magic, if we really meditate upon it, it takes us deeper and deeper, closer to the soul, because the whole vision had sprung up from there. As Shubhendu spoke about the Veda, that the Vedas are true not because God spoke it, but because the soul saw it and experienced it. So this is a Veda, and it spontaneously reaches out to that part in us which is the originating source of Savitri. So it helps us to go deep inside into our soul, and at the level of our mind and other parts, it helps us to reorient.
And just as Mother says that we can do our complete sadhana through flowers,
Yes.
she also says we can
Through
do it
Savitri.
through Savitri.
Completely. And now you see how the divine would see, even if we say just a yogi, how a yogi who is conscious of all the realms, how he sees things. Now, when we see a little worm, we have various kinds of reactions, repulsions, attractions, spontaneous, things about it. But how does a yogi look at its phenomena crawling out of the mud?
And in the worm foresees the coming God.
Yes.
Savitri.
Here, first she crawled out from her cabin of mud. What does he see? Not merely a form, but life crawling out of mud. It's amazing, when you look at it with that scale. Simultaneously, you see in Sri Aurobindo's writings the infinitesimal and the infinite coming together. She crawled out of mud. It's not just, a worm crawling out of mud. So we have this big problem with forms and names. But she, the power of life, crawling out of mud. Where she had lain inconscient, rigid, mute, she was shut inside matter. She was trying to escape from the prison of matter. She was trying to breathe and expand in the stone.
Yes.
And eventually she has managed to crawl out of the mud. Its narrowness and torpor held her still. Its darkness clung to her, uneffaced by light. So just as when we get up, though it is broad daylight, if at all, we get up late and it is broad daylight, as some people do, so still we carry the darkness of the night. Though the light is there, everything is still hazy. So life has crawled out of the mud, but because of a long habit of remaining imprisoned inside matter, it's still not able to spread its wings and fly.
And he uses the word uneffaced.
Uneffaced
not
by
wiped
light.
out by
The
light.
use of words is amazing.
Oh.
And this is exactly, people often ask about supramental. And Sri Aurobindo's many things he has written. At one place yesterday I was reading a one-liner letter, while looking for passages for All India Magazine. In one line he says, the supramental will do nothing if humanity continues to cling to the ego. Uneffaced by light. That's it. We remain shut in the corner. So fine, we remain shut. We have a choice. But of course, there are always souls which are ready, who will open up to the light. So that is the hope for the future.
But humanity as a mass he's speaking of
Yes.
may remain that way.
Yes.
And Mother says it could be even more serious.
Yes. Because it will eventually press.
Yes.
And when it presses more and more,
Yes.
it is obviously painful. There neared no touch redeeming from above. The upward look was alien to her sight. Now see in these two lines how beautifully. There is a touch, but not the look from below. No response, no call.
Yeah.
So there neared no redeeming touch, because there is not yet the upward sight. And it's so true even at a physical level. One of the things that man is really endowed with is to look above. Something very interesting. As man's to direct, he also developed the capacity to look above. Man's sight also is symbolic. Man's posture is symbolic. So repeatedly Sri Aurobindo reminds us that evolution is at once and simultaneously a material as well as a spiritual fact.
Yes.
And we cannot understand the material side of the story of creation unless we understand the spiritual side. Otherwise, we end up using terms like chance, accident, freaks, and somehow things are happening
Yeah.
in this universe.
Karma, fate.
Yes, all these things. Forgotten the fearless godhead of her walk. She has forgotten because she has entered into the mud of matter, into the body of a worm. Just as we too can forget that we are that and we have come from that source of light because we are engulfed with this darkness. Renounced was the glory and felicity. So, this is the first renunciation that we make. The second renunciation is actually a reclamation. So, first renunciation is
Yes.
that we have renounced the glory and the light and entered into the mud of human nature. So, very often people say that why do we need to renounce in yoga? Well, we need to renounce this littleness to reclaim what is actually ours. So, it's not really renunciation, it's a possessing what is our own truth. But as long as we are happy and satisfied with the lesser truths, or half truths, or distortions, or perversions, obviously the full thing will not come. So here you use the word renunciation, renounce so beautifully. Renounced was the glory and felicity, the adventure in the dangerous fields of time. Hardly she availed, wallowing to bear and live.
So this is life at its primitive
Yes.
state.
Yes. So we see simultaneously, Sri Aurobindo will describe at the same time the material side of evolution and the spiritual side. This is the integral vision.
Yes.
And repeatedly we'll find in these cantos. And what does Ashwapati discover there? A wide, unquiet mist of seeking space. This primitive life form, whether we call it virions or RNA, that is the first life forms. Nobody knows how they emerged, and they're teeming in space, jostling for space, elemental energies, nothing else. So it's a mist of seeking space. You can't even call it form. And actually, it is not yet a form. If you see the earliest life forms, they actually don't have an independent form in the real sense of the word. They are just like vibrations of life which immediately must enter a form, then only they can survive. This is a very interesting biological.
Yes, an energy or
Yeah,
vibration.
yeah. It's a protein combination which will finish unless it really enters a form of a primitive,
Yes.
not even a cellular organism, but just a nucleus. Then it will survive. Otherwise, it will vanish. And how Sri Aurobindo has seen all this, as a person conversant with biology, I can see these parallels. Otherwise, it's a rayless region swallowed in vague swaths that seemed unnamed, unbodied, and unhoused. A swaddled, visionless, and formless mind. Mind is there. Even in matter, there is a mind. But it is formless. Its only task is to create just that beginnings of form. So, these everywhere, all the things are there. Even supermind is there in matter. That's why it can emerge, involved. So, mind is also involved in matter. And, there are great practical applications of this simple truth. One can connect with matter if one has a mind which is powerful and intense enough. Charge it, that's how charms are created. Use it for various purposes. People have used it for good and evil purposes because matter contains a mind. Matter also contains divinity inside. So, based on where we stand in our own evolution, we can connect at that level. So, you can turn stone into an image of Godhead, or you can see a piece of stone in God. So, that depends on, it speaks of us, our limitation.
And these words here.
Yeah.
He uses swallowed,
Yes.
swathes,
Swa-
swaddled.
Yes.
Within 3 lines.
Yes. Even the sound sense is so
Exactly.
amazing. Asked for a body to translate its soul. Its prayer denied. We can't jump the line. There is the psychic is just maybe just a little spark lost in matter script. It's prayer denied. It has to go through that whole journeying process. It's prayer denied. It fumbled after thought. It has to develop that little bit of seeking. Of course, in the vegetal kingdom, the prayers are there which are heard. And this is one of the actions of the mother. We have heard about many things of the mother, we just take it for granted. We have heard about prayers of human beings, sages, saints, developed human beings. Then we also hear prayers of other human beings who may not be so developed, but God hears them. Then in Indian Puranic literature, there are prayers of animals. A very classic story of an elephant praying to God, Vishnu, because he is caught by the crocodile. And this story is, recounted as a deed of Vishnu, but this is a very deep symbolic story. Because in childhood, my question was, how did the elephant pray? He has not been given any prayer book. He has not thankfully read a prayer book. And he prays. And God intervenes. So if elephant can pray, we can surely pray better. But we have a mind and we have all the prayer books. That's a big problem. Which prayer to pray? But the elephant prays and God comes. Now, it's very interesting. Of course, symbolic also, the crocodile and elephant, we can look at it. But higher mammals can pray.
Flowers can pray.
Flowers can pray.
The trees are always praying.
Yes, praying. So we see in Mother has taken it to one more step forward. Yes. We have heard about flowers being offered to the divine, but she speaks about flowers praying, tree praying, mountains aspiring. So they have taken this whole understanding of the psychic presence in matter, in nature, to a totally new level, which we don't find. This kind of it's prayer denied, it fumbled after thought. So it's in a way, it was good that the prayer was denied. So it could try to reach out. So it would reach out towards thought eventually. But that's why when our prayers are denied, it's another evolutionary boost given to us. So God knows when to, grant the prayer and when to deny it. Because when you grant the prayer, of course, there is gratitude and the sense of the divine. But it's not granted when then there is effort. It's given to man. Effort, you can't help it. So when there is effort, there is another line of evolution. So either which way we grow. So look at this line, it's prayer denied. So it groped for thought.
But it doesn't have that power yet.
It doesn't have. But there is a straining, a seeking.
Yes.
It fumbled. That's why the word is fumbled after thought. As yet not powered to think, hardly to live, it opened into a weird and pigmy world. Again we see evolutionary process. We are seeking something. And we are not yet empowered to reach there. So the journey will take many crisscross twists and turns. We should not worry. How life starts its step of evolution towards mind by opening into a pygmy world, dwarf world. So many of us, even in our seeking after that truth light which Sri Aurobindo has brought, it's quite likely that we may fumble into these territories. And we should not lose hope and courage, but know that these are passages and never forget that, we are seeking after that. So you see how it opened into a pygmy world where this unhappy magic had its source. We had read earlier that he saw where the, God's shape got tortuous, perverted in the vital, this lower vital, this dark vital. It twists everything. And by little twist, it perverts everything. On dim confines where life and matter meet, he wandered among things, half seen, half guessed. It's the just very first beginnings of life he is describing. Half seen, half guessed. Pursued by ungrasped beginnings and lost ends. There life was born, but died before it could live. Any microbiologist in the world will completely agree with this as a most perfect description of the earliest life forms. It dies before it could live unless it penetrates into another form, and then he will take us one step deeper. Where has it emerged from? There was no solid ground, no constant drift. This is another amazing line. No constant drift. So, normally, all forms are maintained through a process of constant drift. It's a fixed groove through which nature runs, and we get the sense of solidity of form. But if supposing there was some kind of a special photography which could image all the things happening in our very physical body, it may be horrifying. We'll see our body constantly changing, constantly changing. Supposing there was a filming camera which could pick up all the minute, we'll see many cells dying, re-emerging. It would be amazing, as if somebody is stripping bare, and it would be like that if there was a time scale photography. Like somebody said very interestingly that when the earth moves and it is in contact with the sun, as the sun moves around, the moon moves around the earth, something in the earth heaves out towards the moon. So if you do it with a time lapse photography, you will feel as if the moon is tearing away the earth's garment. That is the impression you will have. Because if you do it through a time lapse, but we don't see it that way, we see a heaving. But look at Sri Aurobindo's yogic vision, that how he's, at once it is poetry, sublime poetry, at once it is reality. As Sri Aurobindo would say that in poetry you should not use images which are not real and true. So it's not a fanciful image, it's a true image. It's not that life forms hardly could live is very good to read it. It's also factual.
And mantra.
Mantra. So all these together. No constant drift. So that's why these forms needed something else. These were hardly a form. Only some flame of mindless will had power. And this the mother brings out, that what we call as bacteria and viruses are the materialization of a will. So Nirodha asked Sri Aurobindo, what do you mean, sir? How can bacteria and viruses be, you speak about ill will and goodwill, how can they be will expressing itself? And Sri Aurobindo says, I have been trying so much to put some logic into your head. He starts with that.
He was a doctor, of course.
He says, you still subscribe to the old school of thought that things are either material or spiritual. So he breaks a notion. They are both. So you can see the material side, you can see the spiritual side, yes, or the occult side, and you can see both. So when it is said that it's ill will that harms us, the doctor will say, what ill will? It's the dengue, nothing else. No ill will in this. But actually it is, both are true at the same time.
Yes.
Matter is simply an instrument or a process used by a will. And every time there was a spate of illnesses in the ashram, right from beginning. Even Sri Aurobindo has letters on that. So she would say, I can see where it is coming from. And I can see how it is going around in everybody and striking. The tragedy is that even now when we have a spate of illness, people still think of very material causes. Basically it's a tragedy that nobody reads Sri Aurobindo and the mother. Very clearly she has said. When the cyclone struck, she spoke about it. There are messages. When the service tree fell, portion of it, the mother gave a very clear message. But we again go back to only pure material explanation. But we have to at some point develop the occult vision which Sri Aurobindo is revealing to us through Savitri and of course his countless letters. So there is a mindless will which has power, which materializes as the earliest life forms. And this will can harm or this will can help. So you have both these, and that's why it's so important to have control over our thoughts, because otherwise we end up doing so much harm to this world. Even when we say we are doing mother's work, but we end up becoming instrument of ill will. Whatever it be, never to have ill will towards anyone. Then yes, we will end up feeding first the viruses and bacteria and then end up harming her work. So it is that mindless will. Because these things act in us also. Himself was dim to himself, half felt, obscure, as if in a struggle of the void to be. And we also see that when Sri Aurobindo is describing this, he will also reveal to us what are the states of consciousness when we are also caught in the grip of these energies simultaneously, because these things are also present in humanity. And when we feel dull, obscure, there are letters of Sri Aurobindo when somebody would say, "Oh, I feel so dull, obscured, as if everything is mechanical, don't feel like doing anything." Thank God that time they didn't go to a doctor, they went to Sri Aurobindo. Doctors would have given a whole lot of tests. Ultimately, it found some fault because, always this machine is constantly running some problem or the other. And Sri Aurobindo would give a reply. The physical consciousness in everybody is like that. When the sadhana enters into the physical consciousness, you feel like this. You feel dull, you feel like when we get up after a bad sleep or no sleep, tired, dull, because everything is still in the physical and it's not able to emerge because everything had drifted into the subconscious. So, he uses this word, himself was dim to himself, half felt, obscure, in strange domains where all was living sense, but mastering thought was not, nor cause, nor rule, only a crude child heart cried for toys of bliss. We can see a whole section of humanity and portions of our own nature identified with this child heart crying for toys of bliss. How beautifully he now gives us a total picture.
Yes.
What a line it is, toys of bliss. Thinking that, this is going to give us bliss. Human beings have devised such crude things in this so-called search. They use this word, toys of bliss. Mind flickered, a disordered infant glow. There is a mind. You have to see the TV debates to understand what this is. Flickered. This glow, absolutely illogical, meaningless, and it's going on. And if you, for 5 minutes, watch it, I'm talking of Indian TV debates. I don't know about other places.
It happens elsewhere too.
Well, you will either feel that you are going mad, and it's amazing how people watch it. It is definitely not good.
These political programs, they even use the term talking heads.
Yes, talking heads. And it's definitely most dangerous. They should put a disclaimer. Watching these programs can be extremely dangerous to your physical and mental health. Viewer discretion is strictly required. Only those above 80 can watch it. When either we can laugh at it or we have nothing else to do. And random, shapeless energies drove towards form and took each wisp fire for a guiding sun. That too we see in humanity. It's other day I was reading strange things. You'll see it down south here. You will see sometimes temples dedicated to Jayalalitha. So let me balance. Then there is another person who regards another party leader as his god. Praise, literally praise. Praise to him. I can understand you regard him like a, great man. But literally praying as if, he will grant you the prayers. And so this is called regarding wisp fires as guiding suns.
And these wisp fires are seen on the moors.
Yes.
And they're little flickering lights that come out at night and early morning.
They come and go.
Yeah, when the light hits them, they're gone.
That's the image, wisp fire. But man worships them. This blinded force could place no thinking step. Asking for light, she followed darkness close. That was light to it, and the light for it was darkness or something too abstract. Sri Aurobindo says at one place, for the matter-bound consciousness, God is abstract Supermind is abstract. But from the supramental point of view, matter is an abstraction and God is concrete. So he was asked, disciple asked him, what do you mean supermind is concrete? What do you mean by that? And Sri Aurobindo gave a stunning, amazing reply. He says, I mean by it that it has a density. It has the solidity of a diamond, and yet it is very plastic and malleable. He gave a very, very physical reply to it. It has the solidity of a diamond. At the same time, it is not hard. It is something very plastic. It is supramental substance. It's concrete. That is the original substance. All other substance are derived from that, and they are, it's perversions. But we find this concrete and that abstract. He says there are no abstractions there. They are realities, concrete realities. An inconscient power groped towards consciousness, matter smitten by matter glimmered to sense. Blind contacts, slow reactions beat out sparks of instinct from a cloaked subliminal bed. Sensations crowded, dumb substitutes for thought. Perception answered nature's wakening blows. So this also we see. In an animal world, it is the dharma of that world. It's perfectly valid. But when it takes place in human beings, where there is a thoughtless humanity, which is only reacting to various kind of images, sensations, perceptions, forming quick opinions, thoughtless, mindless, then it is dangerous, because it can do tremendous harm. So we see simultaneously. At the insect level, it's instinct, it's
natural.
It's natural. It's helpful to the instinct. This is the only thing it is capable of. But man capable of thought and prayer, driven by instincts, can be so dangerous. And yet, this is a fact, whether we like it or not. But still was a mechanical response, a jerk, a leap, a start in nature's dream. And rude, unchastened impulses jostling ran, heedless of every motion but their own. And the best way to see this part in ourselves, of course, over a period of time, this goes away with grace and effort. Wake a person from the thick of night. If you want to know the depth to which yoga has gone in, wake at the middle of night and see the response. See how the person reacts. Oh, why did you have to call me at this unearthly hour? But luckily for doctors, it's a training. So, we are lucky lot. So you learn it very fast. Look, you have to bring in the compassion and kindness. You can't say, why did you disturb me at night? Because that's a time when you are plunged into the subconscious. And there is nothing but a rude response. Shock. Reactions, jerks, like you step on a snake's tail and he'll bite you. So many human beings also say, oh, why won't I be angry? He said such a thing to me, so I'll be angry. It's nothing but a snake speaking. Only it has a very nice language and gives a very nice justification. Snakes don't give justification. Though they have a valid justification that we have invaded their territory and poor fellows feel threatened, so they bite. They're not bad guys. But human beings, when they do this, you could have given many other responses you were capable of. Snake had only one response, and that is to spit venom. Nature didn't give it any other response. But we have options, and we use the worst. And look at now this line. I don't know whether this word darkling exists or not. Surely it exists.
Yes.
And darkling clashed with darker than themselves. And this word reminded me of, of course, the word meaning is obvious.
Yes.
But I said, just as there is a word called darling in English, which has a very positive connotation, there is a darkling. For the darkness forces, those instruments are darklings. Darkling. Free in a world of settled anarchy.
And there it is.
Yes.
A settled
Anarchy is a way of life.
Without rule.
Without rule. It's the beginning and the end of creation. Sri Aurobindo says that. But at the end, it's a conscious anarchy. So Sri Aurobindo says it is true that in the beginning and at the end of creation there is anarchy, but in the middle it will lead one straight to the devil. So in the beginning there is anarchy because there is order has to be created out of infinite possibilities. So slowly Sri Aurobindo speaks of it at length in the Life Divine on randomness, order. So in the beginning there is an intuition which will gradually endow things with instincts and sensations, and eventually order will emerge. At the end there are no more rules of the game but a free expression of the divine.
And Mother used the divine anarchy.
Divine anarchy. But in the middle, you have to use reason and things like that to make sure you don't land up into the devil's trap. So, the need to exist, the instinct to survive. That's all we know about life, though there is so much more. This is the first thing which is given, not the last thing. Engrossed, the tense, precarious moments will, and an unseen desire felt out for food. How do we experience sometimes the tense, precarious moments will, as if the world will crash down. If this didn't happen, if I didn't get this food, this is nothing but the insect in us crawling through the taste buds. To know things as they are, then we can change. Otherwise, we simply remain what we are. So Sri Aurobindo is making us conscious, seeing through his eyes. Nothing wrong in eating good food, but it is the law of craving that is dangerous. Law of craving comes from this world. We read that. It is this that has given the law of craving to our lives. Eating good food, relishing it, appreciating the taste, and thanking those who have cooked it to add it, and eventually gratitude to the Divine Mother is wonderful. But craving for it, unhappy if one doesn't get it, going out of the way to procure it, that is where this fellow steps in. Very often the two are mixed in human nature. And we have to preserve one and discard the other. That is why yoga of transformation is difficult. Otherwise, generally, sannyasis discard both, the baby with the bath water. Because Dilip Kumar Roy asked him, do you think I should now, not eat anything? Because he was so much, moved by the desire for fish, desire for sweets, all these. So he said, no, it is no part of our yoga to kill the senses. You have to refine and purify them. It's not that I don't know the difference between, bitter gourd and rasgulla. That would be horrifying. But we know what is what. Yes. And yet we don't crave for it. But when we get it, like Sri Aurobindo, when once, because, normally mother would see what he will eat, not eat. One day, mother was not there, and what was served to him was his favorite dish, pantua. Pantua is like, rasgulla, but the darker color and a little more flatter. Pantua. So Champaklalji asked him, would you eat it? Because, normally mother would not let him eat sweet. Would you eat it? Sri Aurobindo looks at it and says, if it is pantua, I can try. This doesn't mean that we should run after pantuas. That is another side. Oh, Sri Aurobindo liked pantuas. But look at the measured response from the Lord. If it is pantua, maybe I can try it. Maybe I can try it. This is, law of craving is not there at all. But if it is there, fine. Engross the tense, precarious moments will, and an unseen desire felt out for food. For such a consciousness, everything is food. When human beings endowed with this kind of an energy, predominantly, when they relate with people, they use the word love, but they want to devour. They want to devour the emotional energies. They are craving for food. That's why in Savitri there is a line, love is not a hunger of the heart. My love is not a craving of the flesh. Savitri tells death.
Yes.
My love is not a hunger of the heart. Because this gives that. And that love can be so dangerous, dark, ends up in, love is giving, not devouring. And that's why in India you have these terms, Rakshasa nature. Of course, now we have Rakshasas with two horns, but basically it's the same thing, animal type. So Rakshasa nature, even in love, will love in a Rakshasic way. Devour, crush, diminish, possess, finish, rather than ennoble, greaten, heighten. This is the difference. Because it applies at all level. And gusts of nature were the only law. Whatever one felt, impulse, one would do it. If you ask the logic, why are you doing it? Well, I felt like doing it. It's my individuality. This is not true individuality. It is driven mechanically by gusts of nature. I feel like doing it, therefore I do it. I am a law unto myself. So this is this world. Force wrestled with force, but no result remained. Both lost, either which way. When two people fight and are angry and quarrel, both are losers. It's like this. Only were achieved a nescient grasp and drive, and feelings and instincts knowing not their source. Sense pleasures and sense pangs, soon caught, soon lost. This is this world, which survives in our humanity and the brute motion of unthinking lives. Just living for sense pleasure, sense pangs. It's like people who get addicted to drugs. First, they are driven by pleasure, then they are driven by pangs. If they don't take it, they are miserable and they get hooked into that most dark, vital worlds. That's why Mother said when people take these things, they are projected into a very dark, vital world from where it's very difficult to come out, because that is the grip of the most, it's a primitive energy, the most primitive energy.
Yes.
It doesn't leave you easily. Even for the awakened will of man, it's not easy to come out of the grips when this enters you. That's in the Gita, Arjuna asks Krishna that, when these gusts of nature come, how can we control it? Anger and those things. So Krishna says, yes, even the mind of a sage can be moved by these things. So what is the difference? And then he gives the whole Gita that yes, there are ways. Use your discriminating will, exercise it, practice it, bring it to the forefront every time you are moved by these gusts. And then of course eventually he says, turn towards the divine, think of the divine, turn your feelings towards the divine, passions to the divine, work for the divine. It's the most best purifier of these energies. But the moment these energies turn towards serving the divine, the touch of the divine, redeeming touch, redeems them.
But they are powerful universal
Very
forces.
powerful. Very powerful. They are natural to the insect world, of that primitive world. But they survive in man. This is the challenge of evolution.
Yes.
Very big challenge of evolution. And you can't just do away with it. You can't just curse it away. They derive their power and validity once because at one time they were necessary. Now they are evil, but at one time necessary. And second, because, you can't finish one part of the chain without touching all the others. It will disturb a great balance of nature. So you can't just say, okay, fine, let's exterminate. No. The only answer is transformation. But instead of transforming these unthinking lives, we can transform within us that unthinking self. Something of that survives in us. And if we can do it, it will have a ripple effect upon the rest of creation. That is the task given in this yoga. So those who ask what are, those turned towards this yoga doing for humanity, well, this is the contribution to humanity. Because Sri Aurobindo has given us the real problem. You can finish a group, another will come up. Because it's that energy, that consciousness. You finish all the groups, it will still emerge. The roots are there. And you can't take away this chain. It is the first chain, otherwise creation will collapse. Creation cannot leap from matter to flying birds. So divine will not allow this chain to completely vanish. If you crush bacteria, they will mutate. Very intelligently, there is a race between these topmost laboratories in the world and the bacteria. And guess who wins? We all know it. People get Nobel Prize for discovering medicine. Alexander Fleming for penicillin. Obsolete. Bacteria taste it and say very good. You had those things for mosquitoes. Mosquitoes, get more energetic. You fall back on the primitive method of the mosquito nets or the fan running at high speed and taking a blanket if it is winter. Because nature will not allow. This is the first originating power, so it has endowed it with that energy to survive. And because it cannot be exterminated, something of it splashes on and continues in man. You kill all humanity with whom you feel, it will still survive and take roots and grow. That's why when mother was asked, why doesn't divine do something magic, finish all the falsehood? Mother says, no, humanity will survive. Everybody has in him something of that inside.
Yes.
So the solution, transformation. Now, how to do it? Not transform others. This is the big difficulty. I must transform X. This fellow is incorrigible. Okay, fine. But first try to transform yourself. And if you can do it, you will help others. This is the whole logic.
These last 4 lines.
Yes.
Oh.
It was a vain, in fact 5 lines, because it ends with a punchline or starts with a punchline. So if you look at things like that, it appears it was a vain, unnecessary world. What need had God for these bacteria, viruses? He could have done away with them. Whose will to be brought poor and sad results. Is this creativity of the Creator? And meaningless suffering and a grey unease. Suffering to everyone, to them and to the highest as of now man. Nothing seemed worth the labor to become. And hence somebody would see only this part or even 1/10 of it, would declare creation is an accident, a meaningless freak, or what? It's a story told by an idiot with much din and labor, full of sound and fury, but signifying nothing. It's famous lines from, whosoever, not worth it. But then comes the yogic vision. And that's where we see how Sri Aurobindo suddenly in one master stroke uplifts everything to what a height. But just not so his spirit's vacant eye. So when people lose hope and say, what is happening? What is happening? Sri Aurobindo and the mother spoke about the new world, but instead we see ISIS. We should remember, they know. They know why things are. They know the wherefore of the world. They know the riddle. And therefore, they know the answer. Not only they know the answer, they have worked it out. And time will unfold it. Whether we trust it or not, whether we participate or not, it will unfold.
Yes.
Because even in this meaningless world, they have seen meaning. Surely we are at least reasonably better stuff. We should never lose hope. Very often people feel, oh my God, I am full of, Dilip Kumar Roy would ask Sri Aurobindo, I am full of defects, difficulties. Are you sure you have made a correct choice? He would ask Sri Aurobindo. Sri Aurobindo say, at least you should have this much trust that the mother and myself know more than you. So if we have been called to the yoga, there is hope. And why hope? There is the certitude of victory, mother's victory.